The Fall View begins right now.
Football time in Tennessee.
Indeed it is. It is football time in Tennessee, and the Vols have a big primetime matchup on the road against the Arkansas Razorbacks. Tennessee is a 13.5-point favorite. So I've been thinking about Tennessee the last few weeks. Shocker as a Vols fan, given the fact that we're undefeated, 4-0, and number 4 in the country. I thought about this. I talked about last week in the bye week about how Tennessee was the most complete team in college football. An elite offense, in particular in the run game, probably the best running team in college football. And defensively, numbers sake, can make a case they're the best team in the sport. 2 touchdowns given up by the Tennessee Vols in their last 20 quarters. I dare say that's quite impressive. Second game for Tennessee's SEC slate of games. Again, on the road in Arkansas, second consecutive road game for the Vols. I was thinking about, okay, what's the path for Tennessee to eventually get the respect that I believe that we deserve as the best team, as the premier team in the sport of college football, to get to that number 1 spot? Well, to me, it's going to have much to do with the next 3 to 4 weeks, in particular the next 3 games for these top 4 schools. So, show the next 3 games for number 1 Alabama and Texas. There you go. So, Bama has at Vanderbilt versus South Carolina. They'll probably smoke both. And then on the road in Neyland Stadium against my Vols. Then, number 2, Texas, their next 3 games is no slouch. Sure, you see at Vanderbilt at the end there, but Oklahoma, I think Texas will win that game, but still, it's Red River rivalry. You never know what could happen. And then, home game, but against number 5, Georgia. Who knows? Listen, it's not a 14 playoff anymore, so a second loss isn't a death sentence, but Georgia wants to come in that spot in a few weeks or a couple weeks and make a big time statement next week, make a big time statement against Texas. And then Vanderbilt, of course. And then for Ohio State, Tennessee. Ohio State, Iowa. They should destroy Iowa. Oh, at the Oregon Ducks. Now, Oregon, if some folks may remember, were actually my national champion pick prior to the season. As we started to get off at the start of this year, I'm like, I don't know. They didn't have a great showing their first couple of games, but they've shored up things in a major way. At Oregon, that's a tough place to play. That's no cakewalk for the Ohio State Buckeyes, to the very least. And then they have home game against a pretty respectable Nebraska team. Ohio State is the far better team on paper and should win, but crazier things have happened. And then for Tennessee, tomorrow on the road against Arkansas, a home game against those gosh darn Florida Gators, where Tennessee is a 20-point favorite against Florida. And then a home game in Neyland Stadium. College football schedule makers, make that a primetime night game. College game day there and all that. Tennessee, Alabama, potentially under the lights at Neyland Stadium, 100,000 plus strong. Are you kidding me? That's a big time spot for my Vols. Should Tennessee win their next 2, and I believe they will, I certainly think they're going to beat Arkansas. I think they'll cover barely. I don't know if I'd touch the 13.5. Listen, Arkansas has played good defense this season. They've been a respectable team this year. It could have easily beaten a ranked team in Texas A&M a week ago at Jerry World. We get that. Tennessee coming off a bye. It's Josh Heupel. I'll take them to cover because of that, but still 13.5 on the road. It is an SEC school. Arkansas is nobody's national championship or certainly SEC champion pick. We get that. Still a respectable squad, a solid enough defense. I do think Tennessee will have success running the football. I think you'll see a lot more fluidity in Tennessee's passing game. So I think Tennessee wins this one 31-17 over the Arkansas Razorbacks. Again, if that line was at 14, I'd probably say, I'll take Tennessee to cover, but hesitantly, 13.5, I would take Tennessee to win this game or to be able to cover that spread. But if we're looking at a spot, and I know we're doing hypotheticals, but hey, that's why we do predictions on this show, darn it. Tennessee wins their next 2 against teams they should beat. And if they were to be in a spot where they could potentially knock off the Alabama Crimson Tide, dare I say, Texas loses to Georgia. Loses to Georgia. Georgia has one loss on their resume, and that's to Alabama, who Tennessee would have beaten. Even Ohio State, I don't know. At Oregon's it's a hard-fought win. Win or lose that game for Ohio State. At Oregon's a hard-fought win. But with that said, is that a tougher game than, albeit at Neyland Stadium, but against the number one team in the country, coached by a top 5 coach in Kalen DeBoer, a top 5 quarterback in college football, a guy by the name of Jalen Milroe, Ryan Williams, the 17-year-old phenom, doing his thing as a wide receiver in the SEC. I don't know. That elite defense from Tennessee, the best in college football. That running game for Tennessee, one of the best, if not the best in college football as a collective. So, listen, Ashton Jeanty for Boise State, that kid's different. I'm talking about as a collective for Tennessee. I don't think it's out of the question that the Vols could be number one. I mean, hey, they were a couple of seasons ago. Briefly, but a couple of seasons ago, Tennessee was, in fact, the number one team in college football. By the way, for Tennessee after that, they have a game at home against Kentucky, who, I don't know, almost beat Georgia and did beat Ole Miss. So this upcoming schedule for Tennessee, and by the way, after that, Georgia. This upcoming schedule for Tennessee is no joke. If they're able to get through these next 3 games, 3-0, that'll obviously automatically hand a loss to Alabama. And if you think about Texas, could they lose to Georgia? Of course they could lose to Georgia. A Bulldogs team with one loss on the resume, they want to make sure they're in a spot to at least make the SEC championship game ahead of their matchup later this season against Tennessee at home in Athens. And as for Ohio State, unless they were to walk into Oregon and smack the Ducks, which I don't think is going to happen, unless that's the case, I think win, lose, or draw, they wouldn't hopscotch Tennessee. So for this week's edition of the Vol View, the Vols moving on up, baby. Number 4 team in the country, and dare I say, if I come on this show on October 21st, which just so happens to be the 5-year anniversary to the day of carving it up, I could be in this room, in this podcast studio, in front of this camera, in front of this computer, behind this mic, right in front of you, the audience, and saying that your Vols and my Vols, America's team, so to speak, in college football, everybody loves the Vols. Deep down, everybody loves Rocky Top. Come on now. Could be the best team and the number 1 team in the country. That is it. This week's edition of the Vol View. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.